I think it was the summer after kind of the whole COVID excitement. So this is summer 2020. Things were starting to open up a little bit, and I remember that I said to the boys, I have two sons, Jack and Miles, I said, boys, we're going to go to McDonald's. We got to get out of the house. We went to McDonald's. It was one of the times we were at the Baldwin McDonald's here in Jenison, and I think the lobby had just opened back up. It wasn't, everybody was still kind of in that state of what are we doing? What does life look like now? And I'm sitting there with the boys. We're having breakfast. There's a mom, 3 or 4, little booths over, and she is wrangling 4 or 5 kids, all in one of those little booths. One kid is losing it. And you can tell the mom is about here to losing it. And then she said something that has become a frequent phrase in our family. She says to the little one that's about ready to go, she goes, I know we're having a lot of big emotions right now. And I could tell that she was also speaking about herself. And she goes, we are going to take a breath. And that has become a thing in our family that one of us will look at the other and say, I know we're having a lot of big emotions right now. Usually that's enough to kind of break the mood. If it doesn't, then you pivot quickly and you come in with ice cream or let's go for a walk or something. Like if that doesn't work, if that doesn't break the ice, then you do something else immediately. But this morning, we're going to talk about something that we don't necessarily talk about a lot in church. And Nate, a few months ago when we were talking through the sermon series, he said, Scott, we're going through Proverbs. We're going to spend some time looking at the Proverbs. He says, but I have all of these different topics. And he probably listed off 20 different topics. Boom, 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 boom. Emotions. I said, I want that one. He goes, oh, okay. Here's the intro that I'm going to give. Did we send this out in an email or this intro that you sent? We did? Okay, so I just want to read it again. Wisdom isn't just about knowing what's right, but understanding how life actually works. Proverbs reveals that God has built an order into the world, and when we ignore his wisdom, we are not just breaking arbitrary rules, we are fighting against reality itself. So in this series, this final little series here, we're going to look at some of the most fundamental areas of life and discover how God's wisdom helps us to live the way life was designed to work. A lot of people spend a lot of time in Proverbs. In fact, I would say that if there was one place that I could ask just as a general question, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you have ever gone on a Proverbs reading plan, most of us would probably raise our hand. We would say, oh yeah, you read one proverb a day. That's what you do because there's 31 and you got to get in, in February, you got to knock out those last ones because you got to get them in there. On the other days, that we got 30 in the month, that's fine. A lot of us spend a lot of time in Proverbs, but I don't know that we are digging into Proverbs necessarily to look for instances of how God has really created us, molded us to work with our emotions that he's given us, but also to allow our emotions to guide us in a way that honors him. Here's what it says at the beginning of Proverbs. Proverbs verse 1:1. Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and direction to the youth. I tell you what, as I read through Proverbs more and more as I get a little bit older, I think I used to look at this and say, oh, the youth, those little youths running around. I am still a youth, and so are you. Many of us, regardless of how long you have followed after God and after you've walked with God, a lot of us are still in that place of we're still learning new things. So this morning, I want to just invite you to hear maybe some things you've heard before, but to maybe hear it with fresh ears. The book of Ecclesiastes tells us that history merely repeats itself. It's all been done before. There's nothing new under the sun. Sometimes people say, here's something new, but actually it is old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past, and in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now. That's some really hard truth from God, because it means that we are all in a race that truly looks like a race around a track at a high school. We're coming around again and going, no one has ever seen this third quarter bend before. Everyone has seen that third quarter bend. Whether you're running a 400 or you're running a 2 mile, you've seen that third quarter bend, but maybe you are feeling it, experiencing it. Maybe it looks a little bit different to you, but honestly, we could sit down with everyone else in the room and say, have you experienced this third quarter bend? And you go, oh yeah, man, boy, when I came around the track, and boy, that's how I was feeling, out of breath, I was tired. Yeah, we've been there. Same with these emotions, these verses that we're going to look at today in these passages about emotions of God. I know for many of us, if we were to dig back into our history, many of us, we could look at how we just individually acted when we were kids, when we were teenagers, young adults, and even into adulthood. One of the most frequent terms used for me as a kid and as a teenager was, boy, you are so sensitive. You're so sensitive, Scott. Now, that word actually bites a little bit. It bites a little bit deeper, because oftentimes when that was said to me by people in my life, it was not said as a compliment. It was said as a, boy, you really let things get to you too much. You let your emotions come up to the top. You're a little too, you took that a little too seriously. That was just a joke. You're very sensitive. You too? Oh, yeah. As I got into adulthood, we're not going to mince words today. I was in therapy, and I'm sitting down with my therapist, and one day as I'm spouting off some randomness about what happened in my life and about how I couldn't buy a pair of shoes that I wanted to, and I got overwhelmed and I had to leave the store. And he looked at me and he says, have you ever been tested for ADD? I said, ADD? What, attention deficit disorder? Not at all. I wouldn't even have something like that. Why would you even think that? And he goes, okay. So the next time that I came in, we did the ADHD test, and I mean, boom, I was off the charts. And then I tell you, one of the things that really it caused me to slow down and pause for a moment. He said, I want to read some different statements. And we started to walk back through different areas and different periods of my life, walking all the way back to childhood. And he said, would this describe you as a teen? Yes. Would this describe you as a young man? Yes. Is this what this looked like for you as a kid? Yes. And my mom was a public school teacher. She kept everything. We had every report card, every progress report. And so, I had a wealth of information to take into this guy that did the ADHD, and we set it down. And he goes, let's look at second grade. And I was like, oh, God, what happened in second grade? He goes, okay, so your teacher was, yes, Mrs. Louise Topey. I loved her. But she said that you would talk incessantly with your neighbors. I remember that. So in second grade, I remember that Mrs. Topey set up one of those tables, those folding tables, and then put my desk on the other side of the folding table, and the rest of the class was over there. That was pretty sad. At the time, I was like, oh, dang it, I got to get my work done. And now I look at it and go, that was an ADHD little boy, just so excited about class and about classmates. Woo! I tell you, though, as an adult, finally being able to get that diagnosis, it helped explain some of the sensitivity. It helps explain some of the emotions. I'm a guy that would cry at a Hallmark commercial, not even the movie. We don't even have to get to the movie. Like, give me the commercial, and I'm like, yeah, oh, that's it. The dog came, like, oh, God. I'm a guy that would cry at random conversations. I'm a guy that would get verklempt at, seeing a friend that I haven't seen in 3 days. That's a good thing, right? Those emotions are there. But as I began to understand a little bit more about it, I realized that some of those were a little out of balance. Talked to my doctor about it, and he said, well, do you want to try some medication? So we did. And I've been on ADHD medication for the last 3 or 4 years. And I got to tell you, here's the thing that it does in my life. It actually helps reduce some of the outside noise and helps bring things into focus. And that's a huge benefit for me. At my job at Costco, you have to be focused on the person in front of you and aware of the 3,000 things that are happening around you, but here is where it needs to be. There have been days that I have forgotten to take my medicine at work, and I'm like, this whole thing is going to burn down. And I've had a manager look at me, he's like, are you okay? I'm like, I just need to run to the break room for a minute. I need to take my medicine. He goes, we're taking medication now? I'm like, yes, to get through this day, absolutely, we're going to take medication, and it helps bring things together. Whew, man, Tell you one thing that I was not prepared for with ADHD, though. I realized and found out that ADHD is a great mask. It's a great cover for a lot of other things. Many people who have been diagnosed with ADHD also are quickly diagnosed with anxiety disorder and depression disorder. And thanks to our pastor, Nate, he spoke about mental health about a year ago, 9 months ago, something like that, and saying, hey, he'd been talking to his doctor, and I got home from that message that day and looked at my wife, and I said, well, maybe I should talk to my doctor about depression. She goes, oh, okay. Now, here's the thing. That was a wonderful oh, okay, because that oh, okay means I've noticed this for the last 10 years in your life, that you have these mood, and I've noticed that this has been a particularly hard season. This last season was bad. And there were some times that, I walked away from work and I thought, this is not, like, I'm done. I am completely done. I'm going to go dig a hole and climb into it and just never come out, and that'll be fine. And went and talked to my doctor. And my doctor started to walk down some things, started to say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. He goes, okay, well, you are a classic. Great. Classic, once again. And I didn't remember this until Nate, you literally just said this up here. He also said, hey, Scott, what's going on in your spiritual life? He asked me that. Now, and he and I have talked about that for years, about my relationship with God and about working with his house. And I said, it's been really rough recently. He goes, I bet it has. He says, because your mental state, your emotional state absolutely can overshadow a lot of other things going on in your life. So, this is going to sound like a commercial for medication, this entire sermon. This is going to be the last part of it. Okay, so he says, let's try some medication. I said, okay, great. And so I started a little pill, a tiny pill, smaller than your pinky finger and your pinky nail there. And within 2 days, the noise quieted down. Things started to get to a level place. I didn't have this huge swing of emotions. It's amazing what happens when you have a variety of emotions and what that can do in your life. But I want to be very clear this morning, because it's something that I've discovered about being on medication. It's amazing what happens when now there is a void of emotion, and you've been living one way for a long time in life, and now those emotions are not the same as what they used to be. What does the book of Proverbs have to offer us on that? We're going to look at a couple different things. Nate and I have been reading an author, pastor, preacher, leader named Ray Ortlund Jr., and he wrote a book on Proverbs and kind of looking at different themes that come up in Proverbs. One of the things that he talks a lot about as you are looking through Proverbs is the value of your life. Where do you get the value of your life? Where do you find value in your life? A lot of us find value in our life in what we do, our job, who we're married to, who we're the parents of, who we're the kids of, what special things we're a part of, what extracurricular activities we're a part of, either that our kids are or that we are. We find a lot of value in the doing and all kinds of different things. Ray, he says this, and I thought it was very helpful for us to kind of jump into this connection of emotions in Proverbs this morning. He said, I don't believe we get the value of our lives from what they produce. From what they produce. We get the value of our lives from where they come from. Our lives come from God. Whatever the outcomes are, our lives come from God. And I think it's important this morning that as we look at a few of these different areas of emotions, that we keep that in mind. Your emotions come from God. Your emotions come from God. How you are feeling, it absolutely is put there for a reason. If we lived in a world that was void of all emotion, I've seen some of those movies, and they're not pretty. They're scary, some of them. I've read some of those books, and they're not nice. Whether you can go dystopian, whether you can go, old or new. And a lot of times it comes in kind of weird ways that people are acting like robots, that whether it's a 1984 scenario, whether it's an artificial intelligence scenario in the future. Like, void of emotion is really a scary place to be. In fact, I think most of us could probably point to different people in our lives. We think, man, I saw whatever, fill in the blank. I saw that car crash. I saw that movie. I read that book. I witnessed that thing. And boy, I felt it. But my neighbor was just like, yeah, okay, what's next? We have some questions there. Well, oftentimes that lack of emotion can be a sign of trauma, can be a sign of something else that happened in the past. God gave you emotions to help you primarily, this is important, connect with His heart. That's why God gave you emotions. God didn't give you necessarily emotions so that you would blow up at that guy who just cut you off in traffic. That guy that doesn't even know that you're there. That guy that's in his own world. What the hell is he thinking? Well, he's not thinking anything. He's thinking he's got to get to work. He wasn't thinking about you, but your emotions are now so engaged and explosive. God did not give you your emotions so that you could blow up at your kids because they crashed the car into the tree. I did that. Fell asleep at the wheel, crashed the car into the tree. Ran, and my dad came and we pulled the car out of the swamp, literally in the swamp. And I remember, I'll never forget, my dad, he wasn't mad. He just said, I'm glad you're okay. All right, let's go see what happened. Whew. That was very informative to me when my son came home and crashed our car into one of those concrete embutments in a parking lot and scraped the side of the car right on the side of it. And he thought I was going to kill him. And I said, no, I've been here before and I did worse. And thank you, Jesus, that you helped me to have that, that I could connect with your heart, a heart of forgiveness. God gave you emotions to be able to connect with Him. One of the ways that as I'm reading through all of these different, and there are so many Proverbs that mention some kind of emotions. I'm going to run through a couple of them here, and then we're going to fly into the New Testament really quickly. Here we go. Proverbs 3:30, do not contend with a man for no reason when he has done you no harm. Proverbs 10:12, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. Proverbs 11:12, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. Proverbs 11:17, a man who is kind benefits himself, but a cruel man hurts himself. Proverbs 12:25, anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. Proverbs 14:7, leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge. Proverbs 14:29, which sounds a little bit like a verse in the New Testament. Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly. Proverbs 14:30, a tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And then finally, Proverbs 15:14, the heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouths of fools feed on folly. We could go through so many different Proverbs, and we could find all kinds of different Proverbs talking about emotions, emotional states, how you connect, what you think, and so much of it, well, this is something that I didn't make the connection. Ray Ortland, when we were reading this book, he said there is so much of a connection between the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament and the book of James in the New Testament. And it took me a little while to get there with him. I'm reading Proverbs, I'm reading some in James, reading Proverbs, reading some of James, and then we got to this one part in James, and it's going to be familiar to you, but it's something that it took me a minute to actually figure out, this actually has a lot more to do with emotions than what I thought before. James chapter 4. But what about the feuds and struggles that exist among you? Where do you suppose those things come from? Can't you see that they arise from conflicting passions within yourself? You crave for something and you don't get it, and you are murderously jealous of what others have got and which you can't possess yourselves. You struggle and you fight with one another. You don't get what you want. You don't get what you want because you don't ask God for it. And when you do ask, He doesn't give it to you. For you ask in quite the wrong spirit. You only want these things to satisfy your own desire. And the end of that little section, it says, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. You should be humble before God. You should be humble before God. You should be humble before God. How many times have we looked at our emotions as a thing that we need to either control or we need to just be consumed with because it's going to tell us what to do in the world and our passions, when really I want you to look at emotions this morning from a little bit different perspective. I want you to look at when you are having strong emotions, the Bible tells us, well, you need to really examine what is going on. You need to examine that it's probably something that you want, but is it the right thing? One of the things that makes people the most mad at Costco is the fact that we get rid of things. We get rid of things. Things come in on pallets, we sell them, we get rid of them. I had a woman come up to me this week and she said, I am going to complain about something that you are doing. Okay. Can I tell you that I've grown a little bit better in that. That teenager, that 13-year-old Scott Crary would have literally melted into the floor in a pile of tears and like run away. 47-year-old Scott says, okay, tell me what I did. Because it wasn't something that I did. It's something that Costco did. But I am the representative of Costco. Well, you had, and she lists off an obscure product that we had probably 3 years ago. I bought it here last week. You did not. I've become a little bit more confident in saying that to different people too. I said, you did not. No, it was here last week. It was not. Well, it must have been a while ago. It must have been just last month. We had it 3 years ago. Well, I bought it and I loved it, and you got rid of it. Okay. And I'm thinking, that is... And the passion is there, the emotion is there. And there's a little piece of me that is excited for this person, because I think if you show this much emotion over stuffed dates with peanut butter, I think, what else in your life could you be showing some emotion? And sometimes I do want to ask that question, like, tell me about some other act, tell me about some other, cause of justice that you're going for. She doesn't want to hear that. She wants her stuffed dates. Okay, but you did it. So what do you get to do with that? Hey, you know what? We've got a comment box right over there just past the ATM machine. Go ahead and just fill out a comment. Well, does that even do anything? It actually does, just in case you wanted to know. We type those into the computer. It goes right to the top. It does. It goes right to the buyers. But here's the thing that you guys know and that I know is that even the buyers are held by different constraints. They can't send all the things. Anyway, we mollified this young lady, and she went on her way. That is the most recent and the most consistent complaint that I get. You took this away from me. I have a desire for this thing, and you took it away, and now I can't get it anymore. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to put this into perspective a little bit. Jump with me into the New Testament. We're going to look at just a few quick verses of how Jesus modeled for us what our emotions can look like and what we can do with our emotions. And here we go. Mark chapter 3. Mark chapter 3. Again, Jesus entered the synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. And they watched Jesus to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. What did the Pharisees and other people wanted? They wanted to accuse the man who they thought was defiling the law of God. They wanted to catch someone doing something bad. Jesus turned it on its head. And he said to the man with the withered hand, "Come here." And he said to them, Jesus is so good. He's a master at this. "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. And it wasn't that he was trying to be tricksy. He asked the leaders there, the religious leaders, that is a legitimate question. They remained silent. Verse 5, this is Mark 3, verse 5. "And he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart. And he said to the man, 'Stretch out your hand.' He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out and immediately held counsel with the Herodians against him, how to destroy Jesus, how to kill him." This verse, more than a lot of others that I have found when talking about Jesus and his emotions, this one I like the most because it puts two words right next to each other. It puts anger, grieved. Because if you want any other picture in your life of what it is to be a person who has a good relationship with emotions and a good relationship of what we are seeking, that is it. Angry because they were putting up barriers between everyone else and God. Grieved at the hardness of their heart because he looked and he said, are you kidding me? You are the ones who are supposed to be entreating and inviting people toward God. You're not supposed to be putting up barriers. Angry and grieved. And we see that a couple different places, a couple other places with Jesus. Let's turn ahead to Mark. Let me get here we go. Mark chapter 6. The hour, oh, wait a minute. This is it. And now I'm thinking that I had the other one. Okay, sorry. There it is at the top. Thank you. Mark chapter 6, Jesus feeds the 5,000. Now, this is a story that we all know very well. The apostles returned to Jesus. So this is Mark chapter 6, verse 30. The apostles returned to Jesus, told him all that they had done, and Jesus said, come away with me. We're going to rest. We're going to go to a desolate place. For a lot of people were coming and going. And they didn't even have any time to rest and to eat. They went away in a boat to a desolate place. Now many saw where they were going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot, all from all the towns and all ahead of him. When Jesus went on shore, he saw a great crowd. Verse 34, Mark 6:34. He saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Okay, many of us hear this story, and we immediately go, well, then he started to break bread and fed them. But he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. The very next verse, and he began to teach them many things. He sought to fill their hearts and their minds with correct truth about following God before he filled up their bellies. Many of them following him that day would have been overcome with hunger and even emotion at, boy, we've been chasing you, Jesus. Where you been? Where's the next free lunch? And Jesus said, first, let's tame those emotions a little bit and let's make sure that we have a right understanding and a right relationship with God. That's huge. And once again, I would ask, in your emotions, in your times when you're all twisted up in the game, what's driving that? James would say a lot of that is driven because I don't get what I want. And Jesus would say, examine those emotions again. Is it something that leads you toward God, or is it something that leads you away from God? We're going to go to Matthew now. Whew. Oh, my goodness. Sorry. We're going to Matthew 21. Matthew 21. Matthew 21:12. And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple, and he overturned the tables of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, it is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of thieves and robbers. Well, this is the Jesus I like. I like this Jesus. This Jesus is tipping tables. He's throwing stuff. He's yelling at people. If you look in John's gospel, it says he got some cords together and he started whipping people. That's my Jesus. Okay. Den of thieves, robbers, whipping people, tipping tables. Why was he doing that? This is a house of prayer. That's what got him mad. This is a house of prayer. This is not a marketplace. This is not a place where you just do whatever you want, say whatever you want, sell things, cheat people, put up barriers. You've got to buy these pigeons from this table to be able to sacrifice in the temple. That's why they were there. You got to buy these things. You got to exchange the money for the right tender to get to God. Get out of here. That's the Jesus is whipping people. He's the one that's whipping people because he wants people to be able to get to God. Examine your emotions. Examine your emotions. Think about the last time that you got just all twisted up in the game. Where did that come from? What was driving that? Was it a desire to lead others to know Christ more? Was it a desire to lead you into a place where you were following God? Or is it something else? We're going to go to one last place, and I want to make sure I get here. Luke Luke chapter 22. And then I'm going to finish up here. A few years ago, while doing pre-marriage counseling, I'm always searching for the perfect pre-marriage material. And I've done all kinds of different things with couples. We've done surveys online. We've read different books. A few years ago, I came across this material. It's called How We Love by Milan and Kay Yurkovich. And what I love about this is that he talks about, they talk about this idea of how do we connect with other people. He talks about love styles, and it's similar to probably some things that you know, because it's how do we connect with other people. In what ways do we receive love, and what ways do we give love? But the impetus for this book, and as I was watching a video with the authors, I was like, I'm connecting with this. This is good material. He references God in there a little bit, but in one of the interviews, in one of the the times he's like, this is why I wrote this book. Here's what he references. Luke 22. Luke 22, starting in verse 39. And Jesus came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives. And the disciples followed him, and when he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw away, and he knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him, and being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. And when he rose from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping for sorrow. And he said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation." The authors of this book, when talking about how to have a positive and a good relationship with each other and with God, he says, look to Jesus. You want to look to the person who told us and showed us how emotions should work. Jesus, in the final moments of his human, earthly existence here, he is on the ground and he's praying. At this point, he knows what is coming. He knows the cross is coming. And he's praying, and here's the greatest juxtaposition. And it's the one that just is, it's infuriating, and it's wonderful, and it's so sad. "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me." God, if you're willing, if there's another way, tell me that is not a cry, a prayer of agony. That is a cry of, God, please. If there's another way, if we can do this some other way without me dying in a brutal and a terrible, if there's some other way, God, please, if you are willing, Father, please, if you are willing, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Okay, but God, if there's not another way, I know that this is the way that I am closest to you, and this is the way that we open up an avenue back to you, an avenue of forgiveness, an avenue of grace. Whoa, that is the greatest example that I can give you this morning, wrapped up in probably the simplest of a proverb, which is, when you're wrapped up in all of your emotions, the question is, God, what are you teaching me on this? What do you want me to get out? God, what are you showing me here? God, in what way are you inviting me to see your heart more clearly? In what way are you inviting me to help others see you more clearly? In so many ways, what Jesus has shown here is, God, your will is what I want to be done in my life. And the greatest way that we can do that as emotional little beings running around this earth is to invite other people into that in the same way that Jesus did, by offering forgiveness, by looking for ways to help people understand the grace of God and who he is. I referenced that verse earlier in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. So much of what we do on a Sunday morning is not about teaching something brand new that you've never heard before. I think I used to get caught up in that as a younger preacher. Oh, I've got to bring something that the people have never heard. No, you know what we all need? All of us, myself included, we need to be reminded of the things that we already know. We need to be reminded of the things we already know. And here's what it is. So much of what we do in life, it starts in our head, and it flows to our heart, and then it comes out of our hands. Oftentimes, what we think completely influences how we feel, and that affects how we treat other people, what that looks like out in the world, our actions. The book of Proverbs simply says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, the beginning of wisdom. What I think about God is going to affect how I feel and what my emotions are, and that will be lived out in a real way as I affect this world with my hands. So this week, when that song comes on the radio and you get that little lump in your throat, when that movie comes on that you haven't seen for a while and you thought, oh man, that movie, and that the dog comes up over the hill and you're like, oh my God, it's the dog. Yes, examine that a little bit. Because initially I think it's like, oh, the dog lived. You know what's at the deeper heart of that? Somebody came home who was lost. Oh, Scott, you are spiritualizing. You are Sunday schooling the entire thing. Yeah. You know why? Because Jesus Sunday schools the entire thing. That song that came on that reminds you of your mom or your dad that you lost a few years ago, you know what it really reminds you of is the parent who lovingly sacrificed for you and made a way in this world so that you wouldn't have to work quite so hard, maybe gave you the truth for the first time about who Jesus was. And that Hallmark movie, which is so stinking cheesy, but there's a lightness to it, and there's a love to it, and there's just something simple to it that's just like, oh, that's fun. That's cute. Look at that. It's a whole lot simpler than what we make it. Finding love in Jesus, finding our home in Him, finding our existence in Him. Our head, our heart, our hands. This week, as you maybe have to contend with difficult customers, or maybe you do get cut off in traffic, best thing I can tell you is just take a breath. Most people in this world are not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. That's it. That guy that cut you off on traffic, he doesn't even care. He doesn't even know that you're there. He's thinking about himself. And so don't take it personally. This is a time when, quite rightly, the world wants you to get enraged, and those are silly Instagram videos that you can watch. People getting enraged at getting cut off. You know what? That also makes it about you. It's not about you. Take a breath. Pray for that person that just cut you off, that they don't cause a wreck or hurt somebody. Pray for that customer that is yelling at you because you don't have peanut butter dates. That's fine. Yep. I do a lot of praying at work. There's a lot. Because it's a culture of me, and yet Jesus says, no, I want you to live a life where you are pointing to God, our Father. I'm going to invite the worship team to come back up. I'm going to pray, and then we'll close out for today. God, you have created us to be emotional beings, emotional creatures. Lord, there are so many other places in your word, Old Testament and New, where we could see you, Father God, pouring out compassion and grace, but also we see you in some pretty terrifying positions, God. Wrath poured out when people are walking away from you or erecting barriers to you or leading people astray. God, you are not excited about that. Those are the places where your emotions are strongest. When people are leading others away from you. God, I pray that this week, as we have all kinds of different emotions, we're human, God. As we have all kinds of different moments where emotions are welling up, I pray that this week help us to see where we can connect with your heart, where our emotions can come from a right place as we engage you in your word, as we engage this world with your love and your grace. God, I pray that our emotions would be fixed and founded out of our relationship with you, first and foremost. God, we love you, and we're so thankful that we can talk about hard things and that we can laugh together and experience things together. God, it's not just for a silly moment. God, it is so that we can understand you better and your heart for us better. God, we love you, and we pray all these things in Jesus' name.